Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Baradhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Baradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Baradhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giri Baradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. James Dwad, Paramahangs, Prajakchara, Statistic Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Go Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 18. Prithu Maharaj milks the earth planet. Text 19. That's correct, I think. 19, right. Prakalpya Vatsam Kapilam Siddha Sankalpanamayim Siddhim Nabase Vidyam Cha Ye Cha Vidyadaradaya Prakalpya Vatsam Kapilam Siddha Sankalpanamayim Siddhim Nabase Vidyam Cha Ye Cha Vidyadaradaya Prakalpya Vatsam Kapilam Siddha Sankalpanamayim Siddhim Nabasi Vidyam Cha Ye Cha Vidyadaradaya Prakalpya Vatsam Kapilam Siddha Sankalpanamayim Siddhim Nabasi Vidyam Cha Ye Cha Vidya Dharadaya. Prakalpya, appointing. Vatsam, calf. Kapilam, the great sage Kapila. Siddha, the inhabitants of Siddha Loka. Sankalpanamayam, proceeding from will. Siddhim, yogic perfection. Nabase, in the sky. Vidyam, knowledge. Cha, also. Yea, those who. Cha, also. Vidyadhara adaya, the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka, and so on. Translation. After this, the inhabitants of Siddha Loka, as well as the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka, transformed the great sage Kapila into a calf, and making the whole sky into a pot, they milked out specific yogic mystic powers, beginning with anima. Indeed, the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka acquired the art of flying in the sky. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The inhabitants of both Siddhaloka and Vidyadhara Loka are naturally endowed with mystic yogic powers by which they not only can fly in outer space without a vehicle, but can also fly from one planet to another simply by exerting their will. Just as fish can swim within water, the residents of Vidyadhara Loka can swim in the ocean of air. As far as the inhabitants of Siddhaloka are concerned, they're endowed with all mystic powers. The yogis in this planet practice the eightfold yogic mysticism, namely yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. By regularly practicing the yogic processes one after another, the yogis attain various perfections. They can become smaller than the smallest, heavier than the heaviest, etc. They can even manufacture a planet, get whatever they like, and control whatever man they want. All the residents of Siddhaloka are naturally endowed with these mystic yogic powers. It is certainly a very wonderful thing if we see a person on this planet flying in the sky without a vehicle. But in Vidyadhara Loka, such flying is as commonplace as a bird's flying in the sky. Similarly, in Siddhaloka, all the inhabitants are great yogis, perfect in mystic powers. The name of Kapila Muni is significant in this verse because he was the expounder of the Sankhya philosophical system, and his father, Kardama Muni, was a great yogi and mystic. Indeed, Kardama Muni prepared a great airplane, which was as large as a small town, and had various gardens, palatial buildings, servants and maidservants. With all this paraphernalia, Kapila Dev's mother Devahuti and his father Kardama Muni traveled all over the universes and visited different planets. Prakalpya vatsam kapilam siddha sankalpana mayim siddhimna base vidyam cha yecha vidya dharadaya. After this, the inhabitants of Siddhaloka, as well as the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka, transformed the great sage Kapila into a calf, and making the whole sky into a pot, they milked out specific yogic mystic powers, beginning with anima. Indeed, the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka acquired the art of flying in the sky. Hare Krishna. Well, yes, of course, this is continuing the description of the different groups of people who, when Mother Earth became willing, they were able to extract, through the process actually of yajna in one way or another, they managed to extract all different things which, depending on which group it was, they were particular things which were attractive to them. Yes. What was the day before yesterday? We talked about the the Daityas and their immediate descendants, who milked out lots of liquor and beer. And considering what they could have milked out, if they'd really thought about it properly, it wasn't a very great achievement. All these rotten, because liquor essentially means, usually, rotten something, like wine, champagne. It's just rotten grapes. And grapes are nice. Grapes are really nice. And grape juice is really nice. But, when things go rotten, anyway, everyone should know, all the devotees know, that when anything goes rotten, it's just rotten. And that's why if you say someone is rotten, he's a rotten person, it's an insult. So, what can you say? Rotten grapes, rotten like wheat, soaked wheat, etc. Things like that. So, but here, the residents of Siddhaloka and the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka, it's interesting, they've been put together as like a group. Although in one sense they're two groups, of course, but they have similarities. Generally, the others we see that the demons or the pitris, these are single groups, but here there's two groups. The Siddhas, the residents, inhabitants of Siddhaloka, they're particularly known for having mystical powers. Whereas the inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka, they're more known for being able to fly, which of course is a type of mystical power. But Prabhupada sort of, Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Generally, Prabhupada distinguishes between the Siddhas and the Vidyadharas. Yes. But here he's also in the purport. He's sort of mentioning them together. They both have mystic powers, but then you got Siddhas, they have certain categories. Vidyadharas, they're particularly got the flying abilities. The Siddhas, Prabhupada mentions here, they're endowed with all mystic powers, and they practice the eightfold yogic mysticism, means Ashtanga Yoga, which Lord Krishna talks about in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, under the heading of Dhyana Yoga, but Dhyana Yoga is the 7th of the 8 limbs, the term anga is used, which means limb. It's the 7th of the 8 limbs of the Ashtanga yogic system, because each limb is of the Ashtanga. The 8 of them are mentioned here. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. They're pretty much, generally they're quite distinct or fairly distinct from others. Yama means to not do certain things, like our regulative principles, no meat, fish, eggs, etc. And the others, that's yama. You can't do these things. Then niyama, it sounds like it's negative, but it's actually positive. The things you must do. You must chant 16 rounds, and so on. So they're related but distinct from each other. Asana means physical exercises. Pranayama, of course, means breathing exercises. And so on. You go on that dharana means sort of preparing yourself for meditation, for dhyana. And dhyana means meditation. And then samadhi means like the perfected stage of meditation. So in this way, by doing these things, the siddhas, the residents of Siddha Loka, Prabhupada says they attain various perfections. Mentioned here is anima. Prabhupada mentions anima in the translation. Anima of the mystic perfections. Anima means to become smaller than the smallest, or lighter than the lightest. That sort of idea. I think the next one is lagima, and which means heavy. There's a story which we were told back in the old days, in the 70s, which was attributed to Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, there was a story that in the time of the British rule, one yogi came to Calcutta, which at the time was the capital. Delhi was not the capital, but Calcutta was the capital of the British Raj. So one yogi came, and he was one of these, what do they call them? Anyway, like these Shivites who carry tridents and they just don't use clothing at all. And he was like that, and he came into the British area because they had apartheid there, real apartheid. So he came into the British area where all the high class, they drank liquor and beer, but so we say high class. Britishers were. And there he was, just, with no clothes on, and the usual sort of long hair and ashes and this and that. And he just sat down there somewhere in a very public place like Main Street or something like that. And of course, the Britishers were offended. They weren't offended by the beer and whiskey, but they were offended by this naked yogi. So the police came and arrested him and put him in sort of the cells in the police station. But what he did, because he had this anima siddhi, he came out through the keyhole. Hare Krishna. Just a normal-sized keyhole, not like some big keyhole that a human could get through. But he came out through the keyhole. And before they knew it, he was back in the same place sitting on the street and just, doing whatever he would do. So they arrested him again. And he came out through the keyhole again. They didn't know that. All they knew was that he came out. But he came out through the keyhole. And there he was back out in the street again. They arrested him for a third time. And the third time the same thing happened. And then they gave up. They just let him sit there for a while. And after a while he left because, that's what people do in this material world, even if they're yogis. They move on sooner or later. Yeah. So these yogis, mystic yogis, they're generally practitioners of Ashtanga yoga. Like if you read through the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita anyway, if you just read through it, maybe it's mainly from verse 17 to verse 32, but anyway, it's the 6th chapter. You'll see all sorts of like exercises and things like that they do are mentioned. Like right in the beginning of the chapter, it mentions they withdraw or merge the incoming breath with the outgoing breath, and so suspend the process of breathing. Haribol. Any volunteers? Anyway, we'll leave that with you if you want to do something with it. But that's what they do. That's one of the things they do. Merge the incoming breath with the outgoing breath. And then Krishna says, I think it's focus on the tip of the nose. You know, when I was a child, me and my friends, we would sometimes do like that to play being cross-eyed, which is pretty stupid, but anyway, that's what Krishna mentions there in Bhagavad Gita. Focus on the tip of the nose and sit on some sort of like kusha grass mat, cross-legged, and then do these different practices of yama, niyama, asana, and so on. And then gradually develop the siddhis, the mystical perfections. And Prabhupada mentions here, they can become smaller than the smallest, we mentioned that, heavier than the heaviest. They can even manufacture a planet. They can get whatever they like. They can control a person. Yeah. Yes, just sort of mystically make people do whatever they want. There's the story, it's in Mahabharata, of Bhima, who's the son of Vayu, meeting Hanuman right in the later stages of everything. And Bhima, they're both sons of Vayu. Hanuman, it's sort of a bit indirect, but anyway, he's counted as a son of Vayu, and for a reason. But Bhima does not recognize that this is Hanuman, the extremely famous Hanuman, but famous from a different sort of era. But he was still living in the Himalayas, and apparently he's still living there now. So there's like this path through the forest, and Draupadi had requested some particular flowers. And so Bhima went off to get them, and he's following the path through the forest, and it's a bit, you can't really go off the path because there's so many trees and undergrowth, so he had to follow the path. And then there's this monkey, fairly big, but you get big monkeys. There's this monkey lying with his tail across the path. And so Bhima says, because he's royalty, says in a rather royal way, "Hey, monkey, move your tail. No, please," or "Would you mind," or "Excuse me," or something, but "Move your tail." And the monkey, Hanuman, says, "Oh, I'm a very tired old monkey. I don't mind. If you can move it if you like, I don't mind." So a little bit of back and forth, and then Bhima says, all right, I'll move your tail then. And he tries to pick up the tail, but he can't lift it off the ground. And he tries and tries until he realizes, like, with all of his massive strength, until he realizes, I cannot move this tail at all. And so he becomes a little humbled. And he asks Hanuman, well, who are you actually? And Hanuman says, well, I am your brother, Hanuman. And so they have a very warm reunion type of thing there. So that's a mystic power. You can make yourself or any part of yourself, like his tail, so heavy, heavier than the heaviest, and even manufacture a planet. That's amazing. Vishvamitra, of course it's a long story. Vishvamitra's life is really quite a long story. But at one point, like later on, at one point, what happened? There was sort of a competition between him and Vasishta, right? Something going on between the two of them. And, of course, Vishvamitra was a king, am I right? Vishvamitra was a king. Vasishta was a sage. But Vishvamitra wanted to become a sage, like a Raja Rishi or ultimately a Brahma Rishi. Anyway, it's a bit of a long story, but Vasishta was approached by, what was the man's name? Tutanku, or what's his name? Yeah, it's something like Tutanku, was a very pious king, but he wanted to go, he was qualified to go to the heavenly planets after giving up the current body, but he wanted to go in the current body, which was just a regular body. So what did he do? He approached Vasishta, who told him that, no, you can't do that. And what's his name? I know the name. So anyway, Vasishta refused him, and he became angry with Vasishta and said, you're meant to be a guru. What sort of guru are you? You can't, you're a big guru, you're a big yogi. You should be able to send me to the heavenly planets in the current body. But Vishvamitra said, no, I can't. He refused. And so this man went, Trishanku, who was in the Ikshvaku dynasty. He wanted to go to the heavenly planet, to Indraloka, or heavenly planets, which are under Indra, in the current body. So Vasishta refused him and said, you're very pious, just wait till you pass away. So anyway, then Trishanku went to the sons of Vasishta, had I think 100 sons, something like that, and asked them and told them that, your father, he wouldn't cooperate with me, and he got kind of unpleasant with Vasishta's sons, that was a big mistake. They cursed him to become a Chandala. So he became a Chandala, dog eater, on the spot. And yeah, even his body changed color, and even his clothes changed color as he became a Chandala. But then he approached Vishvamitra. Vishvamitra and said, this Vasishta, because between Vasishta and Vishvamitra there was some sort of conflict, competition, something like that. So he approached Vishvamitra and said, can you send me to the heavenly planets? So he did. But Indra saw him flying up, and Indra stopped him and pushed him down. And this happened a couple of times. So what Vishvamitra did, you know what he did? You don't know. You should know. You're a good Hindu boy. He created a planet for him, a heavenly planet. And he created sort of like a mini universe for him. And he was supporting it by his mystical powers as an Ashtanga yogi. But then he used up all his powers, and this sort of mini universe started coming down towards the Earth planet and was going to crush the Earth planet. So he had to take shelter of Lord Vishnu, and anyway, it's a long story. Lord Vishnu saved the day. But this is talking about creating a planet. This was Vishvamitra. He created a planet, and not just one, but a few, in this mini universe for Trishanku, who was still in the form of a Chandala. Yes, so these yogis can do like that, and it's very, by our standards, very amazing. Another story which we heard, attributed to Srila Prabhupada, and I just earlier on I did a search to see if I could find any place where Prabhupada is actually telling the story, but I couldn't. But he talks sort of about a related situation, is that one boy from a village in India went to a mystical powers school. And somewhere Prabhupada said that they still have such schools in, some remote parts of India. So he went and he learned some mystical powers. Then he came back and he wanted to really use those powers wanted to show off. So he came and he spoke to the people and said, you know what? I've got all these mystic powers. Now there was a river. All the villages in those days were on rivers. There's a river by. He said, you see the river? I can walk across it on top. How much will you give me for that? Like, I'm going to do a mystical display. You should donate. Something like that. So one man there, the people were impressed. Wow. And some started offering money. But one man said, I'll give you 2 paisa for that. That's so little, they've abolished the paisa now. They're not used any longer. But there's 100 paisa, there was 100 paisa to the rupee, and there's about 4.5 rupees to the rand. So, 2 paisa is not very much. It's a few cents, South African. And the rand is not worth very much too. Gee whiz. Anyway, that's another thing. So this man said, I'll give you 2 paisa for that. And the young man said, "What do you mean 2 paisa? Walking across the water, that's worth much more than 2 paisa." And the man said, "No, I'll give you 2 paisa, because that's how much it costs us to take a boat across the river, and we don't even get our feet wet." So the mystic yogi was sort of, deflated. Yeah, but these mystic powers are amazing, and Prabhupada says, for us, it's certainly a very wonderful thing if we see a person on this planet flying in the sky without a vehicle. I mean, it would really save some of us, like me, would have saved a lot of money if I could just fly myself. Carrying some bags, and Anukul Prabhu could come and he could carry some other bags. It would have saved thousands and tens of thousands of rands, but what can we do? No visa. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, interplanetary. They can fly from planet to planet. Yeah, Prabhupada says, not only can they just fly without a vehicle, they can fly from one planet to another just by their will, just by thinking about it. And that would be, if we saw someone doing that, that would be extremely impressive. But in Vidyadhara Loka, people just fly everywhere. Got to go to the supermarket, fly off. Yeah. Just down the road to the post office, pick up a parcel, just fly down there. And Prabhupada says, as commonplace as a bird's flying in the sky. So those are the people particularly from Vidyadhara Loka, whereas the Siddhas from Siddha Loka, they're yogis, expert in mystic powers, and they can also fly, but it's not as prominent in their activities as various other mystical things. And so these people then, each group of people, they have to get someone to transform into a calf, like Prahlad on Tuesday was mentioned, for the demons. But in this case, it's Kapila. And Kapila is the son of Kardama, and Kapila, he's known for being a Sankhya yogi, philosophical person. Kardama is better known for being an Ashtanga yogi and mystical yogi. And Kardama, as we've read, have we read? Yeah. Anyway, it's in this 4th canto, or 3rd canto. Kardama prepared a great, by mystical power, an airplane, which was as large as a small town. And it had gardens, palatial buildings and roads and people. And then he, with his wife Kardama with Devahuti, his wife, traveled all over the universes visiting different planets. And of course we also in the 6th canto will encounter Chitraketu. He was also flying around the universe from planet to planet, and it was just normal for him. So they did like this, made Kapila into a calf, and for their part, Indra and the demigods, they made a special solid gold pot. And the demons made an iron pot for their liquor some like low-grade metal. But now the Siddhas and Vidyadharas, they made the whole sky into a pot. That's true. The whole sky into a pot, because they have such mystical powers. They can do things which for us are just totally unbelievable. We all know, I mean, normally we don't talk about this, but I'll just mention it in this context, that there was a certain person living, although he died, I think, of some sort of cancer, but anyway, he used to produce ashes, right? And people thought he was God because he could produce ashes. Note, we are not mentioning any names here. And you know, what use are ashes? It's just ridiculous, actually. Why couldn't he produce some gold? Anyway, Hare Krishna. So all these things are going on. And then they milked out mystical powers, because this is at the beginning of the universe, couple of generations on, something along those lines. And so it seems this is how they got their mystical powers. They got them from the earth, from Mother Earth. It's really interesting. Mother Earth, like sound, which comes from ether or exists in ether, is the most subtle, the finest of the material elements. Earth is the grossest. You can find the characteristics and the natures of all the other elements in earth. So there's a lot in earth. Like, you know, of course, we grow plants which are edible, but we grow plants which are fragrant. Like we even have a few jasmines around, and there's a couple of flowers, a few flowers growing, and you can smell them, and they're fragrant. Where does the fragrance come? It comes from the earth. So all these things are being milked out of the earth. Yeah. So in other words, the earth is such a reservoir of practically everything in terms of material nature. Yeah, even mystical powers and even the capacity to fly, somehow they extracted these things from Mother Earth. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any comments, questions, points? Jai Sachinandan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I think one incident Prabhupada speaks about a yogi manifesting some pomegranates from Afghanistan. You know that story?
Say that again.
He manifested some pomegranates freshly cut from the tree.
Oh, yes.
Without...
Prabhupada had that experience himself.
Yes.
Yeah, Prabhupada visited one yogi, and the yogi said, "Would you like a pomegranate?" But in India, you know, they grow pomegranates,
yes,
but it wasn't really the season. But in Afghanistan, not far away, but some distance, yeah, quite some distance, pomegranates, even the best pomegranates, were growing. So the yogi reached out his hand and produced a pomegranate, like a recognizable Afghan pomegranate, not just, you know, a not very high-class Indian version. Yeah. And there's another story, you know, Hare Krishna, attributed to Prabhupada. But anyway, that Prabhupada was taken by his grandfather to meet a yogi. And so this yogi, real classic type yogi, is sitting there, and Prabhupada's grandfather told Prabhupada that when I was your age, my grandfather brought me to meet this man. He looked exactly the same as he does now. And my grandfather told me that when his grandfather took him to meet the man, he looked exactly as he did then, which is what he looks like now. You get the connection, intergenerational. So, but these things happen. There was this Deva Varaha Baba. Did you ever hear of him? Deva Varaha lived in Vrindavan. He was a mystic, kind of a devotee, but not exactly. And they said, because he passed away, there are photographs, I've got a couple of photographs of him. They said that he was 300 years old. I mean, he looked, in these photos, he looks really ancient.
His Holiness Radhanath Swami speaks of, he had encounters with in the Himalayas. They lived like 300-400 years old.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, Prabhupada says that in spite of all the yogic perfections in the cities, he says, he played it down like it's modern science can emulate what the yogis can do, so it's no big deal. They've invented planes that can fly, ships can float on water, and cut through mountains.
Yes, right. And Prabhupada, reportedly, in telling the story, I mean, he infers, some elements of the story are there. But reportedly, one time when he was talking about it, he said that if someone asked him, can you walk on water? And Prabhupada said, no. Prabhupada said, if I walked on water, I would attract people who want to walk on water. But I want to attract people who want to become devotees of Krishna. So I'm a devotee of Krishna. Like that, yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. What will be the consequences of people acquiring mystic powers? Say this example, like the military, the Western military world, just for exploitation. Is there will be a karmic reaction? I'd like to hear the karmic reaction.
I think, yeah, like Wonder Woman. I read something about Wonder Woman. She was in the First World War, Haribol. Anyway, it's okay. Yes, first point is, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. But if it did happen, it would be problematic, shall we say. It would be problematic. What? They'd be able to destroy so much. Oh, yeah. And they would get reactions for it, of course. You get these powers because it's in your karma to get them. Even if you do certain practices to get them, but it still means that it's in your karma to get them. But then if you use them, depends how you use them. You could use them to benefit people, you get good karma. You could use them to destroy people, you get very bad karma. But don't worry, it's not going to happen. Like one devotee asked Prabhupada, is it possible that Krishna could destroy a spirit soul? You know, we're said to be it. Krishna says we're eternal. So yeah, the devotee asked Prabhupada, could Krishna destroy a soul? And Prabhupada said yes, but don't worry, he's not going to do it. So don't worry, it's not going to happen. Now, Mataji wants...
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Once Prabhupada was asked if he could do any miracles, and Prabhupada looked at his Western disciples and he said, here's my miracles.
That's true. That's a good one. Yeah, that's authentic. Can you do miracles? And he pointed to the devotees, Westerners. These are my miracles. Because previously they were addicted to just all sorts of nonsense, but now they're living pure lives.
Maharaj, I have one question. It's related to Prita Maharaj, that Dharmaraj, Yamaraj, he's also known as Dharmaraj. So why was his semen contaminated and you know it gave rise to Vena, King Vena? So if he is the upholder of religious principles, that question, it's just like...
So, but what's the point?
The point is, Dharmaraj, Yamaraj, basically, he's the daughter of Yamaraj, you know, is Sunita.
The daughter
Yeah.
of Yamaraj is...
Sunita. She's coming in that line, basically. And she gave rise to King Vena.
Right.
So why was the semen contaminated in that line when he's the...
From Yamaraj.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, you read about all these people who got married, like even brothers and sisters, and different people with demoniac qualities, and they produced demoniac offspring. So, you know, somehow or other, that woman, well, she was the daughter of death, not Yamaraj, of death personified, Mrityu. So that's different. Yeah, like hellish. Yeah. So because the qualities go from father to daughter and from mother to son. Yeah, so she from death, her father, got, you know, great inauspiciousness, and she passed that on to her son, Vena.
Okay, I was confused there. I thought that the death was actually referring to Yamaraj.
That's Mrityu. It's a different person.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yamaraj he judges. He doesn't really kill. Like when the Yamadutas came to Ajamil, he was just dying anyway. They came to take his soul to Yamaraj for being judged.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.